Hey, welcome to Rocket Motivation. Before we start the show, I want to thank our great sponsors, Alliance Mechanical Solutions, specializing in pipe and structural crafts, and AMS Utilities, specializing in utilities construction. Both companies experienced in getting back up since 2010. I also want to thank the Stokes County Arts Council in Danbury, North Carolina for their support of the show and all the great things they do in Stokes County.
First of all, if the negative feedback is that I was wrong or we were wrong, the first thing you have to do is research that and find out, were we wrong? Did we mess something up? And if we did, we need to correct that. If it's a matter of opinion and somebody just doesn't like that, I just try to explain where we're coming from and why we did things the way we did them. And most people at that point, if you just have a dialogue, I think that they start to understand. It's a lot easier these days in electronic media, social media, to come out of the box just blaring loud, and often that'll just chill out. But I try not to rise to the same level. That's the other part of it. I try to be respectful and just let them kind of vent a little bit. There are people who will tell you, hey man, you screwed that up, and you hate it. I hate messing it up, but I have to admit it. You don't want to argue.
Hey everyone, this is Rod Cate, and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. This week's guest is a newspaper man. He started his career as a journalist covering politics and had articles appearing in the nation's top 100 newspapers. After a change in his career, he co-founded Lagniappe, Mobile, Alabama's premier weekly news magazine. He's going to talk about his personal and his professional challenges and his recipe for success, not only in print media, but in life. Rob Holbert, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. I don't know what kind of recipe I have here.
Well, I wanted to start on a good note. I wanted to get you really good and built up, so you'll feel good about.
Then I can just fall flat. That's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, Rob, let's do this. Why don't you kind of tell us where you are now in your life? Where you live, your career, kind of what you do. Just kind of catch us up.
Man, I think in life is there's a lot of really good stuff happening in my life. I remarried about 4 years ago. Great wife. I'm happy. My son is in college at the University of Memphis, throwing javelin there, and my daughter's about to graduate from college. My stepdaughter is in third grade and kicking some butt, so she's doing good. And personally, I had an accident back in October and got hit by a boat and almost cut my leg off. And so that's been 5 months ago. It was 5 months ago yesterday, and I'm walking again. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm walking without a cane or a walker, and that's fun. It's nice to do. As you know the story, but we take it for granted when we can walk. But it's nice to be able to do that again. So I'm feeling good about things.
And tell us about Lagniappe. What Lagniappe is now?
Well, we are now. We're Mobile's newspaper. I think I feel like we can say that at this point. We're doing some things now that I'm really excited about. We have a full staff of, for us, we have three full-time reporters as well as a sports editor. So we've got 4 full-time journalists now for the first time ever, and we're covering a lot more news than we've ever done before, and that's exciting to me. I want us to continue to expand if we can get enough subscribers out there to help us get, I really would love to put somebody in Montgomery and just have somebody out there bulldogging everybody. But, that's what we do, and I'm really excited about the investigative journalism we're doing, about that kind of stuff, and breaking stories that other people aren't breaking.
Right. That probably goes back to your beginnings as your career as a journalist.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I can't claim that I was ever I think I'm a better investigative journalist now than I ever was when I was young, but I always loved it. It was always fun to do. And I started out at a daily newspaper, and I had a lot of stories to do every day. And some of them were go out and write about the biggest cabbage in the county. But every now and then you got some good stuff. And I enjoyed that. And I always loved the investigative end of it. And, when we started Lagniappe, we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. It was arts and entertainment, but it always was in the back of my mind that I would love to do that. And, Ashley and I, my business partner, Ashley Trice, we both have, we've pushed the newspaper to become more of a newspaper, not just an arts and entertainment magazine per se. And I feel like we've got some people now who can really do good investigative work. And I decided to start doing some more investigative writing last year. And it's been a while since I had done that. I really have been enjoying it. So I'll probably keep doing it.
Yeah, and let's go back a little bit and talk about your start in journalism. Kind of take us through, to where you got to where, Lagniappe started.
So I started out at the Mississippi Press in Pascagoula, which was kind of the ugly stepchild of the Mobile Press Register. I started there, and I left shortly after. I probably about 10 months in, I left and went to Europe and screwed around, and then went and got my master's degree in New Orleans, and I was determined not to come back to Mississippi. But there were no jobs, and they kept calling me and saying, "We want you to come back. We want you to come back." So I came back, and I was there about 3.5 years. But I was, I covered 2 city councils. I covered 2 police beats. I did whatever investigative reporting they had. I wrote 2 columns a week. So I was really busy, and I learned a lot. And I had a great boss named Gary Holland, who was just a terrific mentor for me. And I got married, and my wife did not want to live in Pascagoula for some bizarre reason. And so I thought this opportunity came up when Trent Lott became the Senate Majority Leader. I thought, well, I got to know him a little bit. I'll apply for a job with him with the concept that I wanted to go up there and learn about Washington, learn about politics, but I always wanted to get back into writing. It was never a thought to become a political hack. I just kind of wanted to more or less infiltrate it for a while and learn about it. And so I did. I went up there. I was a deputy press secretary for a couple of years, and then got off the Hill and was a ghostwriter at a public affairs firm and wrote pieces that showed up in just about every newspaper in the country. None of them had my name on it, though. They were all like signed by the head of Hard Rock Cafe. George McGovern signed one. But
and was he even alive?
He was alive. He was still alive. He signed one, and my secretary signed them. But nobody would sign. I wasn't allowed to do it. But when I came back down here, I just had enough of D.C. and thought, well, I'll come back down to Mobile. Press registers got openings. I knew they had openings because I had friends there, and I thought surely they'll hire me. And they didn't. They didn't want to hire me. They didn't, for whatever reason. They just didn't want me. And so that was kind of a blow to my ego, and I thought, well, I really just kind of floundered around trying to find a job and ended up out at South as the advisor to the student newspaper. And, I settled in there and just sort of felt like, well, I felt like I kind of washed out of journalism. I was sort of like, man, that was quick. I kind of fell out of this, and I'm not where I want to be. And, it was a good enough job. It was a job, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But about year 3 of doing that, Ashley Trice came, and we knew each other, and we were friends, and she said, she was going to start a newspaper. She had been out in Austin and fallen in love with the Austin Chronicle. And so she came and she borrowed a little bit of money from somebody she knew and started this newspaper and asked me if I would write for it. And I said, sure, I'll write for it. And pretty quickly it became evident that the only 2 people who were really going to work on it were the 2 of us. And so I said, why don't I become your business partner and we'll do this thing together. And so we did. And I worked at South for 11 years while we grew the newspaper. And so it's been kind of an amazing thing to think that, 20 years ago, it's been 20 years now that we started doing this, and it's worked very well for us.
Well, and let's talk about some of the challenges. All right, so you start Lagniappe, you and Ashley Trice, and I believe when you started it, is that the time when print media is starting to go down and everything's becoming digital?
It was getting real close to that. I think we started in a recession. We had Hurricane Ivan the next year after a year or 2 after that. Then we had Katrina the next year. It was always like dodging a bullet. And then you started to see some of this stuff happen with the newspaper business. Things started to slow down, and immediately when you had the classified ads, Craigslist really killed the classified ads. You started to see a lot of that falling out at the Daily. Of course, we didn't have classifieds. We didn't have anything, so it didn't hurt us. But, we started to see people getting laid off and newspapers slowing down. And then, of course, it continued. And then the new houses decided to just not be daily newspapers at all their papers across the country any longer and went to 3 days a week. And that was in, I think, 2012. By 2014, we went weekly because we'd started out as a biweekly and thought, this is what we've got to do. And it really was the smart thing to do. It was a lot more work, but it was the smart thing to do, and it really helped us. But we felt like we've got to get in here and cover some of this news because we sort of saw that these things are, going to fall apart.
Right. And so like the Mobile Press Register, which was Mobile's, daily paper,
Yeah.
it goes to what, 3 days a week?
Goes to 3 days a week. And
yeah. And so you guys, you're sitting there thinking, man, we've got an opportunity.
right. Yeah. When you look back at it, it wasn't really an opportunity from advertising standpoint as much as it was from a news standpoint. It was an opportunity to step up and do more news because they were doing less and less news all the time, and they were laying off reporters, and it was just pretty clear that they were going that direction. And as you see now, they're basically a bureau of the Birmingham News at this point. They're not even really, I wouldn't even consider them to be a local paper at this point.
Well, when you guys first started Lagniappe and you get into it, I mean, what were some of your toughest challenges in getting it off the ground?
Ignorance being one of them. I mean, just I think I knew enough to be a little bit dangerous. That was about it. Probably the smartest advice we got when we started was the printer, the guy who actually printed the paper, and I knew him. He was a friend, and he said, "Don't print too many papers." And because we were thinking we'd print 20,000 papers right off the bat, and so we ended up printing 5,000. And when that showed up, we're like, "Where do we put all these things?" I mean, it was just feeling your way through a lot of stuff. The challenges were, in the news business or in the advertising business particularly, there's a tremendous amount of inertia. People tend to do what they do. And trying to get people to break free from what they were doing, a million people told us, "Oh man, we would love another newspaper here. Yeah, we'll advertise with you." And then they never did, or they didn't do it for years. And, in that, I'm sure some of that was our fault. It wasn't, maybe things weren't that great to begin with. We could always improve, but it certainly, when I go back and look at the early ones, I cringe. They're pretty bad. And so, but it took a lot of time to get people to shift to some advertisers who do a lot of advertising in town. It took years to get those people to shift over to do stuff with us.
Right. And being in the newspaper business, and my dad was always in the newspaper business.
Yeah.
He was the editor of the Stokes County or the King News.
Yeah.
Once a week paper. And so being in that family, how advertising is the lifeblood of a newspaper.
It is, but I think that's one thing that we do differently, and it's always been different for us, and because we're both writers, and that's unusual. Usually the publisher comes from the business side of things, and Ashley and I knew nothing about business and knew more about writing, and so one of our first things we did was we sat down and said, "Look, everything's got," these are the things that I think I don't think it took any genius to look at this and say, where are things going in the newspaper business? Well, you've got the internet. There's no reason people are going to be going to the newspaper to read about what's happening around the world or even around the country. Those things that people used to pick up the paper for, it's going to go away. It's got to be local, local, local. So we said from the beginning, it's got to be local. We're not buying any kind of content from anybody. We have writers who've been with us for 20 years that just have written their columns for 20 years. And, that was one thing we thought about, if we create something that everybody wants to read, the advertising will come. And we've always tried to put editorial first and advertising I don't want to say advertising second because it's massively important, but it is, we wanted to create a newspaper we're not sitting around saying, "Gosh, we don't want to upset the advertisers. We better not write this story." We do the stories, and I think our advertisers at this point kind of know what we're going to do, which is we don't have any sacred cows, and I know that may sound, there's probably somebody out there going, "Oh yeah, you do." We don't. There's nothing we're not going to write about. If it's news, we'll write about it.
And talk about the challenges you had, I think it was back in around 2016, I think the advent of the phrase fake news. How did that affect you?
Fake news really hurt us. It hurt everybody. It hurt everybody in the news business. But 2016 was going great. It was a huge year for us. And then right as the election happened, the bottom fell out of it. And in 2017 was not a great year. It was one of the first years. It was really the first year that we've ever had that we went backwards from a revenue standpoint. And it was just a lot of it was two things. It was a lot of people saying, they just hate the media, fake news, everything's fake, and everybody who, if you're writing a story about somebody and they don't like it, the first thing they would say is it's fake news. And it's just that happened a lot. And then also at the same time, you had Google and Facebook really ramping up their efforts to pull advertising, and a lot of people were just saying, you know what, I hate the media, and I'm just gonna advertise on the web. And that took a little bit of time for everybody to find out that wasn't the best process for them. I mean, I think web advertising is important, but it's, when you put stuff on Facebook, you're getting a lot of echo chamber from people who know you.
Right. Well, how did you deal with these? All right, so these are two big deals. I mean, you're doing great, and all of a sudden now you're having a tough year. What do you do to get through it?
Well, you just have to suck it up and work a little harder and quit spending as much money on things you don't need. And so, we came back and, we built back up, and then we started doing a Baldwin County version, which is our neighboring county. So we rented an office over in Baldwin County and put a guy over there and put Gabe Tynes over there. And we were basically producing two papers. We were doing, there were a lot of the things that were the same in both papers, but the news was completely different. The cover story was different. So it was a lot of work. Then COVID comes along and it's like, okay, we're going to pull that back. But you find out, and I talked to a lot of small business owners, and the stories from a lot of them are the same, is that, we found ways to make things run in a leaner fashion. And we found money we didn't really know we had, or found ways to do it. One of the things, too, that really helped us through COVID was subscriptions, the people subscribing. We said, hey, look, we're doing a subscription online. We had fortunately started that about a year ahead of COVID, about 9 months ahead of COVID hitting. And it was kind of slow going. And then when COVID came, we said, look, we need people to subscribe, and people did. And that put another revenue source there that really carried us through that. I was liking it to, we like every business, we got PPP money and that kind of stuff. But I always say, if we didn't get any of it, we would have been an airplane that probably went about 5 feet above the ground and then managed to pull back up. We were that close. It was going, that was important. We were standing out in the parking lot and, in that March going, what are we doing? I don't know what we're going to do. It was pretty scary.
Well, take us to the parking lot. It is scary. So you got to pull this thing out. What do you do? Where do you get the strength to do it? How do you get it done?
I can't lie and say that government money and that, the PPP stuff was a lifeline for a lot of businesses. It was for us. But, basically what we had to lay some people off for a little bit, and we got them back in. We paid them everything they would have missed, but, we had to take a little time off. We actually missed an issue. We didn't have one issue in April of that year. But it was just sort of, we just kind of kept churning and just felt like, hey, if people, they're going to need news. And I think everybody kind of got over the initial freak out, and we started to get some advertising back in. And like I said, people joined in and started subscribing. We started to get some money coming in from that. So we were able to make it to getting some of that funding that helped us get through.
When you missed that issue, was that devastating?
It wasn't good. Yeah, it was not fun. And it's not, it felt terrible because but it was just so many people pulling out and saying, we're not running this week. And so, the advertising just fell out. Everybody quit, most everybody. And we needed to do it just to save the print bill.
Yeah. And where is Lagniappe now circulation-wise?
We are back to 25,000. We were 30,000 before COVID. We were delivering to 1,500 different places around here, and that was pretty expensive. And also, of course, sticking your head in 1,500 different places during the pandemic was a bad idea. So we bought a bunch more boxes, and we pulled things out and started just trying to deliver more in our boxes and more in some bigger places, grocery stores. But, we were delivering to a lot of small places, offices and stuff, and maybe delivering 10 papers, which most of them were probably just being read by people working at the office. So, I always liken it to, why don't we just go out there and read the paper to them? Because it was, some of the deliveries were pretty small, and we just had to pull that back. And I think that just trying to make it something where people get used to going to the box so they're not spreading germs and not costing as much. And that was one area we were able to pull to save a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, and like you said earlier in the show, Lagniappe is no doubt Mobile's paper. But going back from the start until where you are now, it was not a straight line up.
No, it never is. No, it's a jagged line, and it's a strange thing. And Ashley and I always joke, we have this ridiculous luck about things that it just always seems to happen that works out for us. When things look kind of dim, something good happens. And, that's been our way. But I think a lot of that is, I think you make your own luck to a degree. And I know for me personally, when things are down, I don't go sit on the couch. I work harder. I work as hard as I've ever worked right now. And, that's 20 years later. You kind of think, man, it would be nice to be a little less busy. But I like being busy, but it is just, to me, it's like I realized that we needed more. We lost a reporter last year, Jason Johnson, who was a great reporter, and he went to work for the city. And so we didn't have him for a while. And that's when I said, well, we need some more writing. The other guys are drowning here. And so I'll write some more too. And that was good. I think it's been a big thing, and it's gotten a lot of attention around the state. I was writing a lot about things at the University of Alabama, and we've gotten a lot of readership from around the state from that. And it's also gotten a lot of people calling us saying, if you'll write about that, will you write about this? And so we've gotten a lot of stories. I mean, the whole breaking of the Pritchard waterboard story was pretty much somebody said, I need to talk to Rob because he's doing this writing. And they said, called me and said, the district attorney's office ain't going to do anything with this. They're telling us they're not doing anything with this. Will you do something with it? And I said, yeah, we'll do something with it,
And that's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You're doing what you want to do.
Absolutely.
No one wants to talk about how hard they work or how much effort they put in. But I know you now, and I read it, you do a Sunday brunch Lagniappe, and I think that's mostly what you do. And it's hard work, isn't it?
Yes, it's a pain in my butt. I mean, it is. But I did it because I wanted to have something like people get on, you pick up the Sunday paper. We always used to pick up the Sunday paper. I love picking up the Sunday paper, and there's not that anymore. And I thought, well, let's do something. And I had this idea, well, we're going to do an entire issue and just send it out on Sundays, digitally. And then I thought, well, if that doesn't work, that's going to be a tremendous amount of work for everybody. And so I just started trying to do this thing, and it is a lot of work, but and I end up doing it a lot on Saturdays, which isn't ideal, but it's good, and people say a lot of nice things about it, and I think it's gotten a lot of people to read the paper more. So, it's worth doing.
Well, and so, I mean, and this is a general, kind of the obvious question, but tell the listeners, based on your experience, the value of hard work. What do you get out of it?
To me, I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. But, it's like writers, when you're writing, it's not fun to write most of the time. It's kind of hard. People don't love writing in general. But I tell you, when I finish up the Sunday brunch, I feel like I've got a natural high out of it because I'm done with it and it's out of the way. But the hard work is that, I feel like what you get out of it is that there's just value in like producing something and having it work and having people, in our business, we're lucky that we get a lot of feedback. We get a lot of public feedback, and a lot of it's very nice. We get a lot of really nice comments all the time. I mean, you're in the news business. You're going to hear people say bad things to you, but that's okay. I'll guarantee the compliments far outweigh the criticisms. And people generally around here are really nice to us about that.
So, you've had some tough times starting Lagniappe and moving it to where it is. When things get tough, what do you do? What do you do to get through it?
Our answer is always more. We need to make sure that we're getting more out there so that people are getting what they're, I know it's funny when you say they're getting what they're paying for with a free newspaper, but it's that people feel compelled to pick it up. And if you're paying that $1.50 a week to subscribe, that it's worth it to you. That that we need to put enough stuff online. We need to have enough good stories online that aren't in the paper that people are saying, you know what, I don't want to miss that. And so, more is usually, that's the answer. That's always been my answer as well. Okay, I can do this now, and we'll do this, and just pick it up, and we'll deal with a heart attack later.
Well, and also, the creation of Lagniappe and then the moving it forward, it's in a position now, this is what you've wanted it to be. Yeah,
it is. But now I want it to be something else. Now I want it to be more. But I want it to be bigger for the community. But we're really lucky to be able to, it went from something we were doing that we didn't get paid to do for a while. We didn't get salaries for a couple of years. And then, then it became a supplemental income. And then now we're able to live off of it. And now we support 12, 14 people off of it, that full-time employees. And so that's exciting too, from a business standpoint. You feel it. You want people to do well, and you want to be able to make sure that they've got their money. But it's nice to be able to say, hey, we managed to build this, and we're supporting people, other journalists who want to have a journalism career. It's great.
I mean, you've stuck to what you've wanted to do the whole time.
We have always stuck to the one thing that the journalism and the editorial content is going to be important, and that's the one thing we've been stuck to the entire time. I don't think we've ever wavered from that at all, and we've never looked at things and started changing our philosophy on that.
What's the importance of that? What's the importance of sticking to what you do?
I think everybody gets to know what you are and have some expectation of what you are. That's a lot of problem, I think, in our business, in the journalism business, is that you see newspapers doing all these different things to try to make money that aren't anything about being newspapers, or they've decided that they're going to take a position, left or right or whatever it is, which isn't really what newspapers should be about either. They should be about telling the truth and trying to be objective. And so, I think that's the big thing, is that people come to know you and expect something of you, and that you have to deliver that. And if you start failing in that, you're going to hear about it.
And Rob, say someone's going to go out and they're going to start up their own small business. What advice would you give to them about, just handling the adversity, handling the ups and downs?
The big thing is you're going to start a business and you're going to expect the world of it, but it's going to be hard. But if you make it through that first year, you're going to look at it and say, man, we made it through the first year. You go through year 2, you're going to look back at year 1 and say, man, that was really hard. Year 2 is a little easier. And it does get that way. And you just kind of build off of it. And, before you know it, you're down the road and things are just way different than they ever were when you started. And, I think that's the big thing, is just take small bites of it. Don't get despondent about not working right, because it takes time. And it is hard to get people to change their habits. And some people have blast off right out of the box and they have great success. And you'll see that happen a lot sometimes, where people have terrific success and then they try to do something different, and then all of it falls apart. And just kind of stick with what you got. As you go along, grow it, but do it in a way that stays with what with your goals and your what you wanted to do to begin with.
And Rocket Motivation is all about dealing with and overcoming adversity. So I kind of want to broaden the question out. What advice would you give, based upon what you've been through, I guess mostly in growing a small business and Lagniappe into what it is, but what advice would you just give people that are going through adversity, facing some tough times? Say they're listening now and they say, well, man, this guy's, he's grown Lagniappe to what it is. He's had some tough times. What advice would you give just people in general going through tough times?
For me, a lot of times, just going back to this recent accident I had, going back to the hospital, and you can tend to feel a little bit, why did this happen to me kind of thing. And then you see somebody over there who has lost their leg. And I didn't lose my leg. It was close, but I didn't. And I've got a friend whose son has been battling cancer for 3 years. And you think, man, I'm not nearly as tough as that kid. He's been doing this. And I don't know. I just look at it and say, look, other people have been able to overcome much worse things. And that's always, to me, I stop and just think, if you start feeling sorry for yourself, to me, I just look and go, man, there's a lot of worse stuff happening out here. And people who've overcome it, you can overcome it. You're strong, Rob. Just get up and do it. And that, to me, has worked.
All right. So now, if somebody wants to subscribe to Lagniappe, how can they do it?
Well, you can go to lagniappemobile.com. When you click on the sign-in box, it'll direct you to a place to just sign in. It's, you can do it through Apple Pay. You can do it through Google Pay. You can do it, or your just credit card. It's cheap. It's $1.50 a week just to have access. And it accesses 5 different devices, so it can take care of your whole family. The last 2 weeks, we've done 32 or 33 stories that were not in the paper in the last 2 weeks. So, if you're picking up the paper, that's one of the biggest things we get is people say, well, it's free. Why should I pay for it? I'm like, because you're missing a lot of stuff.
Right. Now, Rob, speaking of podcasts, which you're on mine, Lagniappe has its own podcast, right?
We do, the Lagniappe. We record it on Wednesdays. It comes out on Thursdays. Subscribers can hear it. It's kind of a reporter's roundtable. We just go around and talk about some of the stories that week and try to give people a little bit of behind the scenes and some fun stuff. And sometimes it's just very weird stuff, but it's pretty good most of the time.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And so that's what you get, the added value you get for the $1.50 a week.
That's the plan. You get the subscription, you're going to get all the stuff that we don't print in the paper. You get the Lagniappe, you get our reader, which is a PDF reader. So if you've got bad eyesight like I do now, you can see you can blow the words up as big as you want. There's a few things a few perks there.
Rob, I want to thank you so much for coming in, man. It's been a great show, but I always give the guests a parting shot. And so, not to put any pressure on you, man, but it's time to dig deep. You know, give us something to take us home with on the show, some great advice, you know, people that are listening.
You are putting it on me. I think great advice is that we're all stronger than we think we are. And when adversity comes, you'll find that out. But, you know, you've got it in you. People have it in you. You know, I think if people dig deep, you're going to find that you have a lot more strength than you probably thought you did.
All right. So, folks, go ahead, get a subscription, pay that $1.50 a week. And again, Rob, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great time.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it very much.
Great episode with Rob Holbert, talking about challenges in starting a print newspaper when the industry was going digital and the value of hard work. Next week's guest is Champ Napier. At the age of 18, he was sentenced to life in prison for murder. He's going to tell you his story of second chances and making the most out of it. Going to be a great episode. So thanks again for listening to Rocket Motivation. I want to again thank our sponsors, Alliance Mechanical Solutions and AMS Utilities, both companies helping build the Gulf Coast since 2010. If you want to learn more about these companies, visit their website, www.alliancemechanical.solutions.com. If you would like to get my book, Get Back Up, it's available at Amazon. Just put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Cate, and the book will pop up. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to Rocket Motivation wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please rate and review the shows and spread the word about Rocket Motivation to your friends. So until next time, remember, never give up and always get back up.